think we're all aware of the lawfare that we have witnessed over the last 4 years, and now we see activist judges usurping the power of the President of the United States. We have Maureen Steele, the co founder and writer, grassroots organizer uh, of an organization that is pushing back on that. Maureen, tell us about what you've observed in our judicial system of late, and how do we push back on it?
Oh, well, I think everyone's witnessed the lawfare, like you mentioned earlier, John. It's these judges, these federal judges, are acting widely outside their scope. They have very limited power. They have the power to, apply the law and interpret the law, and that's it. And it's within the confines of the Constitution as well. And they're not doing that. They are, issuing these injunctions to deliberately undermine, a duly elected president and his agenda, which is really the agenda of the American people. So there are things we can do, and that's where American Made action comes in. We have American Made Foundation, which is a 501c3, and that's for education and documentaries. And then there's the C4, that's American Made Action, and this is where we're bringing, the lawsuits and really organizing the people. Everyone, like General Flynn always says, local action, national impact. So everyone needs to start cleaning up their own backyard. And these judges that operate outside the scope of the Constitution, or they're warring against it, they're violating people's due process, all of that, the right to be innocent until proven guilty. So many of these judges are just completely, sidestepping that like it's not a big deal, when they're sidestepping the supreme law of the land and applying lower law, which is statutes, and the statutes that are unconstitutional. They simply can't do it. So if people go on to the American Made Action site, you'll see we have an affidavit up there right now for people to sign with DocuSign, and it'll go right into Pam Bondi's her email box, where she will know that the people are citing all the laws and all the maxims of law that these rogue judges are violating. And it's really up to we, the people, to stop it.
So, Mike Johnson and Jim Jordan say that they're going to investigate these activist judges. What do you think that looks like? The Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan says he's going to hold hearings. Is he going to haul these judges in front of the Judiciary Committee and ask them for to justify their decisions?
Well, he might. Again, I don't know what good that's going to do when we have a Senate and a Congress that is so corrupt. Our charters of freedoms are really what we have to stand on, the Constitution being the supreme law of the land. Um, you know, to enforce that, we got to go have a hearing. If you're speeding in your car and we all see it, we don't need to have a hearing to know that you were speeding. I mean, these judges they've absolutely have gone rogue. I don't really know what's left to investigate. It's very obvious that it's not within their scope of power. Also, in the Boasberg incident, where it was, the United, what is it, UC, it's just eluding me now. What's that group? I can't remember the name is the NCLU, not the ACLU.
ACLU, American Civil Liberties
ACLU
Union.
brought the case, and they made the argument off an old precedent. It was the Hawk case, where if you're an organization and your charter is to do a certain thing, and one of their charters for certain is to protect immigrant rights. And that's how they brought this lawsuit to Boasberg in the first place, this action to Boasberg. And when I saw that, and when you look at what the threshold is under the law to be able to do it, they just don't meet the threshold. They never should have been able to bring this. It should have been tossed right out, because these people that they're fighting for are not immigrants. They didn't go through our immigration process. These weren't people that came here. One of the thresholds is and build a life here, have a family here, work here. None of these people were working. They're criminals. And they weren't planning on spending the rest of their lives here. They're not buying homes. They're not part of the workforce. So again, they didn't meet the threshold for Boasberg to even make the ruling of turn those planes around and come back. They're just not immigrants. They're foreign invaders, and they're criminals. So as far as I'm concerned, any more lawsuits that come forward on that basis of any of these people that crossed our borders illegally, they're all criminals and they're not immigrants. They simply didn't go through the process.
Well, just in the last month, we've had the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals upholding a lower court ruling which blocked President Trump from mass firings of probationary staffers. Now, as the commander in chief and the chief executive officer of the United States government, it's my belief that he has the right to fire anybody that he wants to that's not protected by the Civil Service Act. And now you've got the Supreme Court and the Chief Justice seemingly taking the side of these activist judges, which is shocking and disturbing to me. I just wonder, how do we rein it in?
Well, the charters of freedom say we must abolish. When a government becomes this corrupt, it's up to we, the people, have the right to abolish it. And I'm of the mind at this point, the entire judiciary is so wildly corrupt from the top down. Justice Roberts was proven, and Boasberg, to be part of that little group of five, judges who their whole purpose is to undermine President Trump's agenda. That in and of itself, that violates canon law, which is what oversees the judges. That's the rules they have to abide by. They violate their own canons. And the only way you can enforce it is to go to other judges, on those judiciary committees and ask them to fire one of their own. So this has become so incestual with the bar, the lawyers, the judges. They're not going to reprimand their own, and they haven't for a long time. These lower courts, these administrative courts in particular, are wildly corrupt. They're unconstitutional. In fact, on February 20th, 2025, the Solicitor General came out and said all of these lower courts are unconstitutional, and if they get sued, the DOJ will not be defending them at all. So, we have even people within the system saying it's wildly corrupt. And so it's the equivalent of like the rape victim going back to her rapist for help. Now we've got to go to a corrupt Congress to impeach these people. They're not going to do that. It's really up to we the people to enforce this and to clean house,
Well,
and to really read our charters of freedom and to get this done.
well, that's what we're trying to do right here today on The Truth. And Justice Roberts, said that he did not think that Trump was right in calling for the impeachment of judges that ruled against him. But how can you say that when the judge's ruling is so clearly not grounded in law and the Constitution? It's mind-boggling, isn't it?
It is, but that's a criminal act. That's a crime. They're warring against the Constitution. They're undermining a sitting president, and he's totally within his Article 2 rights to be doing what he's doing. And to try to undermine that and say that he can't, as a Supreme Court justice, he just fired himself, as far as I'm concerned, in the fact that he's on that committee, whose sole purpose is to undermine Trump. That's insanity. This man shouldn't be there. That's a crime. Where are the charges? He should be cuffed and stuffed. This is hideous what's happening. And I'm shocked as I'm watching this, how no one's seeing these as crimes. Let's have a hearing, have a hearing. They need to be arrested. These are, this is sedition. Where's the military here? Where's the military tribunals? That's what should be going on here right now. This is like you said, this is craziness. It's insanity.
Well, I like the way you're thinking. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, said that the Congress does have the power to actually close down federal district courts. I love the rhetoric, but I give you the odds of that ever happening somewhere between 0 and 0.1.
Well, exactly, because they're corrupt. We have a corrupt Congress, and they don't apply the law. I mean, we can see through Doge that has been so enlightening, I think, for so many Americans who might not have believed the COVID lie. They might not have believed of all the malfeasance. They think the government's good. We're here to help you. They're seeing now that they're not. They've stolen trillions of dollars from the American people. Through mass money laundering schemes, and they've been doing it for decades. And they've dumbed us down for decades. They intentionally don't teach us civics or the Constitution. In fact, I've been saying this on every show I've been doing because it blew my mind. So a friend of mine has a niece who graduated from Columbia Law School. This is an Ivy League law school. At graduation, sees her niece and says, what was your favorite class? How'd you like con law? And con law, for anyone who doesn't know, is constitutional law. She never took it. She just graduated from law school. She never took constitutional law. It's an elective.
Well,
Now,
that was
the
one of the
Constitution,
required courses in my day in law school.
yeah, but that's the supreme law of the land. And that, kids in law school don't even learn that, and they're not taught that's the supreme law of the land, and that there can't be any statutes or any lower law that is repugnant to that. And every state constitution reiterates that. Yet there's statutes and policy and codes, in every state that is absolutely repugnant to the Constitution. And anyone who voted that in and allowed that, they're criminals too. I mean, we have a lawless society right now, and I think the biggest criminals out there are the ones wearing those black robes and sitting on the benches all over the country. And I think we're really seeing it. I also think they're fighting harder than ever as well. All the malfeasance is coming out, and they're trying to shut it down as quickly as they can, because I believe that a lot of these judges are involved in it. Behind the scenes, paving the way for all of this to go through. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of that coming out. I think 2025 is the year the truth comes out, and it's going to be hard to hear.
Well, I say let the sunshine in. I've certainly seen firsthand judges that don't follow the law. We had a judge in Henry County, Georgia, who ruled that our legal team had made a prima facie case against the fraud in the 2020 election, and ordered that the absentee ballots be unsealed. And then 9 months later determined that the parties didn't have standing, which the Georgia Supreme Court unanimously reversed. And we still have not seen the 2020 absentee ballots, and I doubt that we ever will. And then we saw Judge McAfee, when he had his former boss in his courtroom, that would be Fani Willis, who made a mockery of his courtroom. She was disrespectful to the judge like no one I've ever seen before. She was flagrantly conflicted with her lover, who happened to be in the courtroom, and the lead independent counsel that she hired and paid $750,000. And he just said, well, one of you have to get off the case, but the other parties can appeal to the Court of Appeals. In other words, I don't have the guts, so you take the case if you want to the Court of Appeals. And they did reverse Judge McAfee and find that Fani Willis was in fact conflicted and had to get off the case. But we just see these judges repeatedly making what are obvious bad decisions, and I don't know whether it's cowardice or corruptness, but it certainly is time for it to end.
Yeah, I believe it's corruption myself. To do it, I don't think it's cowardice. To do what they're doing, that takes such. I want to say a word. It begins with a B. The audacity, the unmitigated gall that they have to just trample upon the Constitution and the will of the American people. They're forgetting who they work for. These are federal employees. They swear an oath to uphold the Constitution. They have shirked that. Again, you simply can't do it. And again, to hold a hearing over that, I think it's insanity. We should be holding trials to see what their punishment is for doing what they did. This is just craziness. I don't think we need to have hearings, and there's certainly nothing in our Constitution that says judges have to be can only be impeached. It doesn't say that. It says you're only a judge as long as you're on good behavior. I don't think warring against the Constitution and undermining a sitting president and deliberately stepping outside the bounds and the the narrow scope of what your job is, flagrantly stepping outside of that is on good behavior. So they should be shut down. The fact that they're still allowed to sit on these benches is beyond asinine. I can't believe that they're not just, that the military doesn't walk right in these courtrooms and grab these judges and cuff them and take them into a military tribunal. This isn't okay.
Well, I think we've got to collect the evidence against them first and show that they are, in fact, corrupted or compromised. But to me, the litmus test of the level of ethical behavior in our federal government, you don't have to look any further than JFK's assassination. We've been told for 60 years that Oswald acted alone, and now I think that most scholars who have investigated the JFK assassination and looked at all of the files that we are told that we now have, I'm not sure I believe that one either,
Right.
but that it's
No.
pretty obvious that our own government, namely the CIA, orchestrated and oversaw the assassination of Kennedy, and that there's a strong likelihood that Oswald was not even in the sniper's nest, let alone a lone gunman, because one of the Secret Service agents found a new bullet, or reported that he found it, and that's been kept from us for years because it dispels the single bullet theory, the magical bullet theory, if you will. And I've said every week on this show for the last 2 years that this federal government is corrupt to its core. And I want to know who took a shot at President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania on June the 13th or July the 13th, 2024. And I'd like to know whose payroll Ralph was on when he was laying in wait for the president just 3 miles from where I'm sitting at the Trump International Golf Course. I mean, these are really bad things, and all the all the leads go straight back to our own government.
Yeah, yeah, our government is corrupt. And again, I go back, I keep pounding on the charters of freedom, but when a government becomes this corrupt, we must abolish. And that's the only thing we can do at this point. We don't know who we can trust. Our government has turned on the American people. What they're teaching, lawyers is wrong. They don't teach them the Constitution. We don't teach police officers. Your job there is to protect people, but also to uphold their rights. Same thing with judges. They think their job is to undermine your rights, and that's not. Their sole purpose is to make sure your rights aren't violated, and that your rights stay intact. And what they've done is shredded people's rights, and they've harmed so many, especially in family court. With the children and the trafficking and all the craziness that's going on down there. So, yeah, we've become wildly corrupt, and I think cleaning house is really the only thing we can do at this point.
Well, there are a lot of heinous crimes that people can commit. You spoke about child trafficking. I don't think there's anything that a human being can do that is worse than to take advantage of a defenseless child. And we are hearing just a lot of rumblings, nonstop rumblings, but without a lot of evidence that children are being trafficked. And we had 350,000 children who came into the country that the Border Patrol cannot track or tell us where they are. And President Trump has said that he fears that they are in fact dead. These are the worst crimes that anyone can commit against humanity. And so what is going on?
Well, Mike Pompeo, when he was Secretary of State, in one of his reports, he reported that the foster care system here in the United States is the #1 purveyor of children into the sex trafficking industry. So that's his own report. That's within our own government reporting that. That's extraordinary. So 85% of kids that go into foster care are sexually or physically abused. And I would say, from what I've researched, about 70% of the children they take away from families are not abused. They're not in a hideously abusive situation. And parents can't get their children back. I've listened to hundreds of stories of parents that have lost their kids because school called, the child's upset because they couldn't go to a party. And they lose their child over that. You're trying to parent your child, and your kids call CPS on you or something, and those kids are gone. So one little girl did that at 14. She's 19 now. She's been raped. She's a mess. She came from an upper middle class family, took dancing lessons, in school. Parents wouldn't let her go to a party, and CPS took her, and she was trafficked. And now these kids are adults, and they're talking about it.
And you explained to me before we came on that when Hurricane Helene hit in North Carolina, we were waiting for FEMA to show up. Their appearance was very scant and their effectiveness virtually non-existent. But you tell me that Child Protection Services was there on the ground actively working in North Carolina.
Just to take kids, not to bring anyone a sandwich, not to write out a check to a family to put them in a hotel, just to take your kids, because now you're living in a tent And so you can't properly take care of your children, even though they had sleeping bags, mom's cooking on a campfire. I mean, you go back 200 years, that's how we lived anyway. And now they're saying that that's not okay, as if these people weren't harmed enough. They've lost their home, they've lost everything, all their documents, they have nothing. And now their kids are gone. They don't even have their kids' birth certificates anymore. Some of these kids, the parents have no idea where their children are. The CPS just came in and took them. It's terrible what's happened. And these people, you know, parents can only take so much, and I think that's what they bank on. They break the parents, and that's all that's left to find these children when they're gone. And if the parents are so broken and they just can't, and they feel so hopeless, and they don't have the money for lawyers to help them, the kids can disappear because there's no one coming to look for them because they broke the parents. And that's, I've seen it over and over again in family court, and that's the court, and those are the judges that put all this through with CPS. Those are the administrative courts, and every judge sitting on them, those are unconstitutional courts. They know it, and they sit there and they rule from that bench like statutes that are unconstitutional apply, and they don't. So they're all criminals as far as I'm concerned,
This
and they're
is
committing
horrific.
criminal acts.
This is really hard to hear. And you're saying these people in North Carolina have yet to be reunited with their children, that Child Protective Services took them away?
That's what I'm saying. And I'm telling you one step further. These parents don't even know where their kids are. Like, it's not like, oh, they're in a foster home or they're in a foster group home. These parents don't even know where their children are.
What are we going to do about it, Maureen? This is really devastating news
Well,
that
we're
you're
gonna take
imparting.
down these lower courts. We're gonna President Trump was already told by the Solicitor General that he can do it. I think that's the first step in the right direction. We have to abolish CPS, these agencies. You know, the Supreme Court already ruled in July of 2024 that these agencies have no power. They don't have the power to make law or enforce law or interpret law. That's all kicked back to the judges. But the judges are so corrupt, they're not adhering to that. They're still letting CPS just, they just rubber stamp what CPS says. They just rubber stamp what these agencies say, and that can't stand. So, we have affidavits that are going out that people can sign. We're also going to be launching lawsuit after lawsuit against these judges and against those who help them, these agencies. It's got to stop. And so we're going to be going to Congress. And we're also going to be announcing DOJA pretty soon, which is a Department of Government Accountability. And we're going to be pulling right up alongside DOJ and bringing the accountability piece. We're not going to let them sleep. And when Trump got in office, he said he's giving the government back to the American people. Well, sir, we're reporting for duty.
Well, I hope
When we
that
introduce
anyone
DOJ.
in the Trump world that listens to our broadcast will bring this issue to the forefront in the administration and rein in child protective services that are evidently, based on what you're sharing with us, devastatingly separating children from their parents in a very wrong manner. Maureen Steele is the co-founder of American Made. She's a writer and grassroots organizer. Thank you for everything you're doing. How can we follow you? How can we observe your good work?
Sure. You can follow me on X at Maureen Steele _. And then you can get on AmericanMadeAction.org, AmericanMadeFoundation.org. And on American Made Action, there's things people can do today. Sign affidavits and read them. Read it because you learn from them. The other thing that everyone needs to do is learn how to run a constitutional republic. Learn what it is. Learn who you are within that. And one of the best places to go is www.wethepeople2.us. There's 8 classes. They're 1 hour each on there. They're excellent. Can't recommend them enough. They're free. And it teaches you how we lost our government, how it was ripped out from underneath us, and this new system overlaid on top of it, while we have all just been asleep at the wheel.
Well, it feels to me, and we can talk about it on another occasion, that our country is under siege. We are under attack. I've been talking for 3 years, as have many other people, like Peter Schweitzer and the General, his name, Richard, his name escapes me for the moment, but that we are at war with China. And a lot of this stuff seems to be happening to just tear our nation apart at its seams. I don't know what the source of it is, but it's really concerning. And we just appreciate everything you're doing, Maureen Steele, and keep up the good work. Keep fighting.